I'm Ophelia. This is going to be pretty casual, so I'll stand here so I don't have to keep doing this, so I know what I'm doing. I am an immigration attorney. I have a practice in Maryfield. We do full service immigration. Ironically, there is one thing we don't do, which is EB-5 investment, and I'll explain that. I'll explain why when we get there. But other than that, we do all sorts of immigration as well as criminal and domestic. I did not go to GW, but Anam did, and so that's my connection to GW. And also, I drive by here all the time. For foreign students, there's often the question about whether to stay, how to stay, what you're going to do here in the United States. And so they're both opportunities and they're challenges for students who are here as international students or thinking about what they want to do. I just want to go over a couple of terms that I think are important to know for us to talk going forward. So, because I'm going to say them, and then I want to make sure that everyone understands them. A non-immigrant. Does everyone know what that is? It's someone who only wants to stay in the United States temporarily. When I say temporarily, that doesn't mean that I mean 15 minutes or a week. I mean, temporary just means temporary. So you could want to stay here for a week. You could want to stay here for 6 months. You could want to stay here for 2 years. You could want to stay here for 6 years. But at the end of your time period, however short or long that time period is, it is your intent to return to your country of residence or citizenship. That's what non-immigrant means. As opposed to immigrant, which means my intent is to stay here forever. I want to live here. Maybe someday I'll get my citizenship, but immigrant means I want to come here and live here forever. I want to work here. I want to, buy a house here maybe. I want to have my family here, whatever. But that's the difference. So you have non-immigrant, people who want to stay here temporarily, and you have immigrant, people who want to stay here forever. Visa, I'm sure everyone knows what that is, that little thing that they put in your passport. A visa is a permission slip. This is actually something that I should have done this in a different order, but visa is the thing that they put in your passport. It is like a permission slip which allows you to come to the United States. That's what you present at the airport or whatever port of entry. Whatever kind of status you have, the visa is what allows you to come in. This is only important because the visa, you can have visas that have longer periods of their validity. What that means is that until if the visa, for example, is valid until January 1st of 2017, you can use that visa until January 1st of 2017 to enter the United States. It is not to be confused with how long you can stay in the United States. How long you can stay in the United States is found, where's that clicker thing? Okay, all right, anyway, I-94 electronic record, that is the piece of paper that used to be white that they used to give you when you entered, and now it's electronic. That little piece of paper is what determines how long you can actually stay. So even if I came to the United States on my whatever kind of visa, which we haven't yet talked about, if I came in and it was valid until January 1st of 2017, and I came in on January 1st of 2017, the I-94 is what's going to tell me exactly how long I can stay. Visa status is whatever kind of visa you have. I don't know what everyone has here. How many people here have an F1? A lot. So all those are student visas, right? So everyone knows what their visa status is. It's student, right? Compliance, I'm going to talk about that only for a second, just because I'm going to keep using that word later. You have to be in compliance, meaning that you have to be following the rules of your visa status. So every visa has a different set of rules. And so whatever visa you're here on, you need to be following those rules. You need to be in compliance with those rules. So that's what I mean by compliance. I already did I-94. I-9, employment eligibility verification form. That's for when we move forward. After we leave our student status and we want to work in the United States in some form, we have to fill out this form. That's all you need to know. It's a government form, an IRS form that tells the government what kind of authorization you have to work here. Okay, so there's going to be a quiz on this later. Just on these vocab terms, everybody know them? Perfect. Okay, now you know the terms. So my understanding when they asked me to come here and speak was that everybody wanted to know what to do about investments and innovation. I'm going to try to cover a number of visas that I think are relevant to students, but I am going to start with what if you want to invest. Also, it seems timely given what he just said about this really cool competition where they throw money at you. Which we should do, right, Anna? I'm going to do that too. Is this a real question? Does anybody want to invest in the United States? Yes? No? Okay. Only two of you, that's fine. I can see that. There's basically two ways of investing in the United States. And by investing, I mean you're on your own, right? You have your own company type of a situation. Or I guess there's three. But really, there's three. We're going to start with E2. The E2 visa is a non-immigrant visa. So that's the first thing that everybody needs to know. E2 means, the non-immigrant is, what did I say? You just want to stay here temporarily. It is a treaty investor visa, which means that you can only get this E2, this visa, if your country, the country that you're from, has a treaty with the United States. I did not bring that list, but the list is found at that website, travel.state.gov, content, visas, blah, blah, blah. There's a list of those. If your country is not on there, then you are not eligible for an E2 visa. So the United States obviously enters into treaties with specific countries that allow people to invest in the United States. What do you have to do? Well, it's not on this slide, but I'm going to tell you anyway. There's two ways of getting the E2 visa. One way of getting the E2 visa is to do a change of status here in the United States. And that's relevant to you because you are here in the United States. So let's say that you're at the end of your F1, you've completed your degree, and now you're thinking, oh, I want to invest and I want to have my own business. Then you would be doing a change of status from the F1 to the E2 visa. Just so we're clear, you don't get it. That's not the only way you can apply for an E2. You can also apply for an E2 at the port of entry, and you can apply for it at the embassy. Wherever you're applying for it, you have to meet certain requirements. To get the E2 visa, you have to be investing substantial capital into a bona fide enterprise. You have to have 50% ownership or more, or operational control. That's the E2 visa. So I said it really quickly. It's actually a little bit more complicated than that, obviously. Like, what does it mean to have substantial capital? That's actually relative to the enterprise. So if you are entering into a business, if your business that you're investing in is worth $100,000, then substantial capital is going to be what? $50,000, $50,000 or more. That's your substantial capital. But what if you're getting a food truck? And so your investment is $50,000. Then your substantial capital is going to be what? $25,000 and more, right? So it's something to think about. Like, people are often put off by the substantial capital question. Like, what does that mean? Well, it means that that number is relative to your enterprise, like whatever it's going to be. Yeah.
Is it 50% always?
Well, no, because you can have less than 50%, but then you must have operational control. Right?
And then the percentage goes to what?
That's kind of up in that's sort of that's kind of a mushy question, right? That's a mushy question. It's definitely not 1%. It's probably more like 25%, and I've seen that number kind of vary, right? But then you must demonstrate that you have operational control of the business, right? Yeah. Wait, somebody had their hand up. I swear to God.
I was going to ask, when you say operational control, you mean day-to-day business?
Yeah, it's a funny thing about USCIS. So yes, day-to-day business, but operational control is actually operational control. So what sucks about that word, operational control, which we're going to see in another visa, is what does that mean if it's just you? Right? Because in the E2, that can be sufficient, right? But some of the questions that often come up from USCIS is, that the person is doing non-qualifying work, meaning like you're making your own photocopies, which I always think is kind of stupid because, I own my own practice and I also make photocopies,
Right.
These things happen, right?
Right.
I use the fax machine, it's an odd thing, but operational control really means that you are determining not just the day-to-day operations, but you are determining the direction of the enterprise. So you're making decisions about hiring and firing, you're making decisions about the direction of the company, what's going to happen. Yeah.
Does the type of structure play a role? Can it be an LLC or something?
Any company, anything. There's no real limitation on the type of structure.
So regarding the funding,
Source of funding, right? Mm-hmm. Go
the
ahead.
source of funding, it has to be money you receive from investors, or it has to be like your own money.
It has to be your money.
So do you receive investment?
Right. So that is, you have to track the source of the funding. So you can receive investment, but there has to be some investment on your part, right? And it can't just be like I gathered investments from other people. It must be, so you have to source that funding and you have to show that you actually have an investment and that you actually have a stake in that company. Financial. So that would be an example of that question of operational control. So let's say that you only have 20% of the business. You only have 20% of the cash, right? So then you go around and you get all these investors, right? So then the investors are taking up 80% of that business. That's fine as long as you have operational control of the business.
Yeah, but what happens if you're an early seed startup and all your money comes from the outside, but you still
You got to have something in there. You got to have something in there. It's a little bit like Vegas. Like you have to have some kind of risk in there. There has to be something of yours that's in there.
What about if you are in operational control?
You still got to have a little bit of something from yourself. Again, that number can be a smaller number, but you got to have a risk factor in there as well.
Okay.
When you think about it, there are different ways of demonstrating that as well.
Just to give you an example, if I do like a Kickstarter campaign and it goes well and raise money, like can that be considered?
But that's your money that you raise now.
Okay, so then.
Right. So it's all going to be about how you phrase that, right? It's going to be how you present that investment and and how you present that money. So do you see what I'm saying?
The reason I'm asking because I've been to this event recently about the proposed rule.
Okay.
And I was trying to understand what you said.
Do you mind if I sit?
So we can have the sound in the video.
Okay.
Do you mind if I sit in this chair?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, did you turn it on?
Is it on?
It's on,
Yeah.
This is a catch box. You throw it around, and people can talk to it. So, the next person to ask the questions.
Yeah, I hosted that event for the proposed rule, and I was trying to understand what's the difference between the E2 and this proposed rule, where you still have to have investment from outside.
Well, the truth is that I was asked about the proposed rule right before I came in here, and I didn't include it here because it doesn't exist. And it's been a proposed rule for for quite a while, and until something is real, I don't talk about it. We're just speculating about it. I can tell you right now, because E2s exist right now, and I do E2s, that substantial, substantial capital, it all is going to be about how it's framed to USCIS, like where that money came from, how you got that money, what your investment is, and then what your operational control is.
And how quick is the change of status from, let's say, F1 or J1 to E2?
Well, in the United States?
Yes.
Well, everything at USCIS takes like 5 months, but E2s have premium processing, so you can have a decision within 2 weeks if you wish to invest another $1,225 to the United States government. Actually, I think that number's wrong, because I feel like the fees are going up on December 1, and I don't remember what the premium processing fee is.
So it can be as quick as 2 weeks and 5 months, 6 months.
Yeah. So, and the reason I bolded this source of funding is important. The other issue is not just about like what kind of investment you're receiving, but it's also about where you get your money. So the United States, for obvious reasons, feels that it's important to know where you get your money. So they will, if you receive your funds from outside of the United States, you have to source that funding too. You have to show where that money came from. So if you get some sort of inheritance from your grandmother, you're going to have to demonstrate that she had that money and then it was transferred into your bank in Brussels and then later brought over, and then later from that account you transferred it from your Brussels account into the U.S. account. And obviously that is about ensuring that there's no money being used for investment that comes from criminal matters. Yeah.
I just have a question, a short example, and the question I'm having is really, I hope, a simple answer. Let's assume I want to set up a business that is legal headhunting. I want to headhunt lawyers for law firms. I don't need any money to do that.
Okay, So that's what I mean by the relative to the enterprise, right? So what you would have to do is you would just have to demonstrate that it is, that what you have to do is, in that situation, what you're doing is demonstrating that it's a bona fide enterprise, that it's real, active, and not marginal. So that's fine. It doesn't matter how much the business is. It really doesn't. What's really important is that it's real, active, not marginal, that you're actually making money on it, that you're going to make money on it, and that you have that operational control and that investment.
Because I would be the only
Exactly.
user,
Mhm.
I can read it out, so I can show that I have money to pay.
Yeah, I think the hardest part about this, the hardest part about the E2 is that you basically have to do everything, right? I mean, you got to do everything. You have to go and you have to incorporate the business. You have to start, because it is not a pitch at USCIS. It's not like, hey, I was thinking about doing this, so this is my idea, and here's like where my money might come from. No, no, no. The money's in the bank. I rented the kitchen, and I got all these bottles, and I created a label, and the minute that you give me this visa, I'm gonna now sell my product X. Like, you have to do all the work before we even get to the place where we are filing for that visa.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an active auditing process that happens, or is it just you present all these things?
When you say active auditing, what are you referring to?
Like does USCIS actually supervise and survey your?
No. I think they only do that if there's a question mark about it. So I shouldn't say they don't. It's not normal. It's not normal for the E2, it's not normal. It is normal in a visa later on that we'll talk about. But I mean, it's not normal. I think that only happens if they suspect that it's not happening, that you're not really, selling tacos. Right? Okay, so I think I did the E2. So other things to know about the E2, when you first get an E2, your initial stay is only for 2 years. That's basically what you get, is extensions in 2-year increments. There are no limits on extensions. So in fact, even though you're a non-immigrant and you have the intent to leave the United States, you can in fact extend your E2 forever without ever doing anything about it. You can just keep on being an E2, just keep on extending it, that sort of thing. Also, the first time you come in on the E2, the first time around, they really take a good look at it. It's kind of interesting because when you go back out, sometimes when you travel and then you come back in, they'll give you another 2-year extension, sometimes for free the first time, which is nice, a little benefit. But then when you go, then you'll have to renew it again and present evidence that your enterprise continues to be bona fide and active and real and not marginal. Yeah.
So does your business have to be doing, if it's not doing that well, what happens to the 2-year visa? If you have a 2-year visa and your business is not doing as well as you would expect,
Then we have to make arguments that it's not doing as well as it's expected to, but we expect that it will be doing well. Then you have to be more, the same way that you would, in fact, it's probably very similar to what business people do. I'm a terrible business person. I have my own business, but I'm terrible about that. Okay, I don't think as Scott says, my partner, I never even signed my partner agreement, but that's okay. But I suspect that people who are actively doing investments have have better knowledge about the presentation for pitches, that sort of thing. So in cases where I have that on an E2 or an L1A, what I generally tend to do is I then audit it with an accountant and I ask them to project numbers and say, yes, it didn't go as well. I have an explanation for why the business didn't do as well, and then another explanation for why the business is going to do well, and here's the plan, and we're still not sunk.
but you're talking about extension here.
Yes.
You're not, okay.
Wait, yes?
Well, thank you. Is there a minimum limit for the investment first? And secondly, I'm on F1, so my husband is on F2. So is there any other alternative visa for spouse visa or dependent visa?
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a second, the F2, F1 question. But okay, so the first question was, is there any minimum on your investment? And I already said no. The answer is no. It's all relative to the size of the enterprise.
Okay, if you are on E2 visa, so all you have to do is to run your own business. You cannot go for another work.
That's correct.
Okay.
So almost every single visa that is not permanent residence, okay, anything that's not immigrant, you're tied to whatever it is you're doing. So if you're on the E2, then you're tied to your E2, right? I mean, that's it. There's no work authorization. A dependent of an E2 can get work authorization. They have to apply through a separate process for work authorization, and then they can go work wherever they want. The other question, I guess, was about whether or not you have other options. So your spouse, you're on an F1, your spouse has an F2. I mean, your spouse obviously can convert his visa to something else, and then they would be able to do something else, but.
No, like my question was like, if my current status is like F1, so my husband's current status is F2. So if I convert my status to E2, like if I get E2 visa, what about my husband? Like,
He can still apply for work authorization as a dependent.
okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there a rule that you need to hire like people in the next year, like the business grows?
No, but it is a question mark. I mean, there's no rule about it. It's just one of those things where, I mean, obviously it's a question about the viability of your business if it's not growing. Now, if it's a business that's continuing to be A-OK, and, you know, notwithstanding the fact that there's a single employee and the single employee is you, that's fine as long as you're, you know, as long as you're doing well. There is no requirement for employment of others. Are there any other, yes? This seems dangerous.
And it's going to be test the box. Work for an Irish crowdfunding company, and so we have an Irish crowdfunding company, and so we operate in Ireland and the UK, and we're going to operate in America. Do we need, if we have people we've already raised money for in the UK, can we raise money for them here without them actually coming?
Can you raise money here?
Raise money for the businesses here in the States without them, the physical owners, coming to America?
Probably. I mean, I don't think that's an E2 question.
So if we don't have to bring the owners of the company who are based in Ireland to the US to raise money for them, correct?
Probably not. It's not an E2 for sure.
That's
I
awesome.
mean, that's probably a tax question.
We have a tax ordinance.
Do not. Do not. I think that's more of a tax question than it is an immigration question since they're not here, right? So the question is about that's really a question about raising funds and taxable income. I would suspect. Anna?
I don't see a problem with it.
Yeah.
So long the founders of the company have no intention of coming here, we're coming to America being non-immigrants, we could raise as much.
I mean, so I think whatever activities are taking place here are not going to be controlled by USCIS. If the people who are doing it are not here physically in the United States, they're not controlled by USCIS. That's going to be an IRS issue. Yeah, I wouldn't want them. What do you mean cool? I don't think anybody wants the IRS. Okay, so that's the E2, which you can ask questions about when I go to the next thing, which is, now what if you want to invest and you want to stay? That's the EB-5. I'm going to compare and contrast. I realize that I forgot to make a slide here. Anyway, that's fine. So this is the EB-5, right? So this is the I want to live in the United States and make an investment, and I want to get my green card too. The traditional EB-5 is I have $1 million, and I'm going to invest it here. And this is the necessary investment of capital, right? So $1 million worth of cash, equipment, inventory, other tangible property, assets, valued at fair market value, legal ownership of that capital. Now that is an EB-5. So here's my $1 million. I started something that cost $1 million, and now I want my green card. That seems like a fair trade. So that's the deal with that. It has to be a new commercial enterprise, and by new, they don't mean new. They mean established after November 29th of 1990. So it either can be new or it can be restructured as new, right? And it also, of course, means that you have to create 10 permanent full-time jobs within 2 years of your new commercial enterprise that cost you $1 million. Yeah. Now, what if you don't actually have $1 million? And you know, another way of doing it is through the Immigrant Investor Regional Centers. They're everywhere. So those are big companies that already developing companies where you go in and you invest your money in there. They take your cash and then they convert it into a green card. And then there is also an exception, which I listed here, for targeted employment areas. In some areas, the investment for the EB-5 can be $500,000 rather than $1 million. And those are rural areas, essentially. Those are places that the United States government would like you to invest in. Everybody wants to put $1 million into Washington, D.C. Everybody wants to put $1 million into New York City. Everybody wants to put $1 million into, you know, Chicago, but nobody wants to put $1 million into Des Moines, Iowa. So if you don't want that, or in the outskirts, right, in this rural area. So if you don't have $1 million, you could invest $500,000 in this like super, oh, I'm missing a zero. Yeah, sorry. My bad. Anyway, that's $500,000 that you can put into a rural area. So this is the one visa that I don't do, and that is because you know the liability on a $1 million investment for an attorney is quite significant. And this is basically an accounting issue. I mean, the requirements for the EB-5 are fairly simplistic. The biggest requirements are accounting ones. It's about being able to demonstrate the value, the market value. It's a lot of accounting, and I don't like that. So that's why I don't do it, in addition to the liability. Does anybody have $1 million that wants to invest? Yes? Perfect. So what I usually do when someone calls me up and says they want to do the EB-5 is I give them the name of another lawyer, and I say, call up this person. She'll help you find the right investment for you. Because it is essentially an investment. That's what you're essentially doing, unless you really have that $1 million.
So I have another question for you. We raised $1 million for someone who wasn't here, but the company's in their name. Now can they come over because of that $1 million we raised for them here in the States?
Yeah.
We have to do that.
Yes, you have to demonstrate all of this.
Oh,
So you,
bank account, bank statement.
yeah, well, and the capital, the commercial enterprise, all that stuff, yeah. I mean, technically speaking, I mean, that's just a question of source funding again. And the EB-5, like the E2, you have to source, I mean, you have to look at the funding, where it comes from, that sort of thing.
Even cooler.
Right. So that's the EB-5. Now, where is the intersection? It seems very extreme. I've always thought it was very extreme. Like, so you can either be running a food truck on the E2, or you can be investing $1 million, and those are your only two options for investing in the United States and getting your green card. Technically speaking, your E2 visa can be converted into this-ish. It's a different process. So if your E2 visa business, the one that we talked about over here, ends up being really successful, and over time, you actually, I mean, over time, you can, of course, have invested $1 million into your E2 business, right? I mean, maybe you didn't have $1 million at the get-go, just to throw it down on the table, but over time, you have, in fact, invested $1 million into your E2 business, and you have, in fact, at this point, 10 years later, 5 years later, whenever it is, had tremendous success and created 10 full-time jobs and all this other stuff. There is a conversion process from the E2 to the EB-5, to the green card. Okay, so what if you don't have any money? Yeah?
Yeah, could you go back to the EB-5?
Of course.
These boxes.
For the rest, yes.
One more. Alright, so I'm looking at, so in the event that, let's say, somebody does, because you mentioned like the enterprise and all that, like, what if somebody simply buys up a multifamily property valued over $1 million and hires, what was it, 10 staff members to, like, I don't know, somehow to oversee it. I mean, it's not like the most innovative thing, but I mean, is that like a loophole, or is there things that are around that prevents that sort of stuff from happening?
Well, you're talking about buying an existing building.
Right, or, for the sake of development, or,
Right, I mean, but buying an existing building, buying an existing thing means restructuring it and getting that expansion with the substantial change that's under that, showing a 40% increase in net worth and or numbers of employees. So that's where they get you on that.
Oh,
It's not so simple. You
Oh.
can't just come out and trump it and just buy, a casino.
yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was like, what doesn't that mean? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, so now what if you don't have $1 million, and what if you don't want to buy a food truck? Okay. What about working for somebody else? So what else do students do after you get your F1? You already know what your F1 is. Okay, I forgot. How many people have F1s again? You know what? It's better. How many people do not have F1s? Okay. So, but do you have any of these other things? Okay, great. So we'll get to that later. So all these people on the F1s, you know that when you're done with your degree program, that you will then get the opportunity to have optional practical training, which is basically, a work authorization to check it out. These are basically the options. I'm actually going to go through them one by one, but just so we're clear, these are the options that most students look at. You have the F1 students, yourself, who you are. You can also extend that F1. You can go back to school because nobody likes, I mean, everybody loves school, right? And it's so inexpensive. Right?
Just a very quick question. I am on OPT right now.
Yeah.
And at the end of February, and I'm thinking about going back to school. Can I convert? But I shouldn't say it out loud. I'm not sure I'm going to go back to GW.
I hope it's not Strayer.
But my visa in my passport is for George Washington University. Can I, without leaving?
Okay, so what happens when you do a transfer, a student transfer, it's fine. You can go from one school to another without a problem, as long as you are in compliance. I got to use the word again, compliance. So what happens is that transfer is done through international student advisors. Okay, so if you transfer from one school to another, they update your CVIS, and then two international student advisors talk to each other. They like switch some paperwork around. I don't do anything. They write some notes down in CVIS, and that's what happens. Your question is about your visa. The visa is a bigger issue because the visa, remember, is the piece of paper that allows you to come into the United States. If you transfer schools, it is most helpful to turn around on your next trip out and get a new one. Yes. I mean, it has nothing to do with your stay. If you don't depart the United States, it's irrelevant. But if you do depart the United States, the best thing to do is go and get another visa. Yeah? Okay. So before I finish that, I'm just we'll cover these ones, right? So basically, most students, these are the options that they have: F1, the J1, the H1B, the L1, O, TNs, E3s, H1B1. Is everyone familiar with these? So as we were just talking about, at the end of most people's degree program, they get OPT. So they get 12 months per higher degree to work, technically in your field. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but nobody knows. So you have your work authorization, you're running around, you're working. I assume that most people who are on OPT, when they're working, their real goal is to get that employer to employ them and to keep them. And that's a tough thing to do. I mean, there's just it's just tough. On the OPT, I'm sure many people know that there's a 17-month extension if you're STEM. So I guess it's helpful to be STEM.
I think it's 24 now.
Well, not yet.
It is, right? It is.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. That's one of those, you know what that is? It's like cap gap. Right? Like cap gap, like everyone says we have cap gap.
Yeah.
But cap gap happens every year. So every year we don't actually have cap gap until we have cap gap. Right? Every year they're like, maybe there's going to be cap gap. Maybe there's not. And eventually we get cap gap. But it's not actually in the law. And of course you can travel while you're on your OPT. So while you're on your OPT, you're working at some employer and you really want them to do what? But now what does that mean? If they hire you, you need what? You need a new visa. So, I mean, I should have done this backwards. I mean, most people who are on F1 do not go to the J1. Most people who are on F1 go to the H1B. That's the most common thing. The H1B is literally the lottery of work visas. I can lecture for one small second about the fact that the United States immigration system is broken. It does not reflect our current economy. These laws were written, obviously the Immigration Nationality Act was written in 1951, and we just don't have the visas that reflect the economy that we have, or the global economy for that matter. So there are very few visas that permit people to work lawfully in the United States, and that's a real bummer. So the best one is the H-1B. The H-1B is for workers in a specialty occupation. The job has to require a bachelor's degree or its equivalent, which I'm assuming doesn't matter here because you're all here at GW, so presumably you all have bachelor's degrees or the equivalent. And the job must require it, and the beneficiary must have it. And there must be a connection. So, for example, I always say this, like I have a JD, that doesn't mean that I can get a job, an H-1B job as an accountant. What's the worst thing about an H-1B? There's only 65,000 of them. That's the worst thing about them. And every year, 120,000 people apply. What does that mean? It means we have a lottery. So everybody throws in on April 1 for a visa that starts October 1, and maybe you're going to get it, and maybe you're not. There are some jobs that are cap exempt. If you work at some higher education place, university obviously, nonprofit research, government research. You get it for an initial period of 3 years, that's your maximum. You can only have an H-1B for 6 years. Most people who are foreign students also know, because they read a lot of blogs, that you can get an extension, what's called the 7th year extension, if you've already started the process of getting your green card, which I'll talk about later. But other than that, you've got 6 years on that H-1B. It's the best visa ever. You can have dual intent. You can be pursuing your green card, unlike every other kind of visa. Also, in addition to people who have bachelor's degrees, you can also be a model. Some of you may be familiar with Melania. I feel confident she had an H-1B. Yes. Oh, you have the, let her go because she has the box, then throw it to him. Yeah, stop hogging it.
My OPT expires 18th of February. I have a possibility of working for my academic advisor, CAP exempt, here at GW.
How would that pay out?
Time-wise. Does the university, do they have to wait until the 1st of April when you...
No. If you're CAP exempt, you can do it whenever you want. I recommend you do it before the expiration of your OPT.
Thank you.
I currently work for a government research agency. However, I'm not working on the research side of it. So am I still eligible for the CAP exempt H-1B?
You are, who is paying your salary?
Well, technically it's a contractor.
No.
No.
I mean, you have to be employed by to be CAP exempt, it is the person who pays you, meaning your salary, your paycheck comes from an FEIN number that is associated with an Institute of Higher Education, a nonprofit research organization, or a government research organization. Contractors don't count. Anybody. The one you like best. That guy.
So my question was that I'm on my OPT right now, and I have a couple of opportunities in front of me that very good chance of materializing. Already started working with these two partners who are very averse to raising any kinds of funds because they want to maintain all sorts of financial control over the ventures. And my question was that, and one of them is both of them are American citizens. Can we start legal entities that can employ me during my OPT? Because we have every confidence that it will eventually, at the end of 3 years, and it is in a STEM field, right? Both of these ventures are in a STEM field. We have every confidence that at the end of 3 years, we will qualify for the EB1 flag that you had on there. It's just that, well, my question is, at this point, can there be a legal entity that can employ me during my OPT? Or can I start one during my OPT?
So what you're really saying is, can you create a business and sponsor yourself?
I don't want, well, yeah, sure.
That's what you're saying. And as long as you're not the only partner in there, the answer is yes.
The other people are American citizens.
Right. The answer is technically yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What if they're not
They're not what?
American citizens?
That's right.
Can you use the box?
Well, he has the box now. But I think she had her hand up.
Yeah.
So, are there any difference between H-1B sponsored from GW and H-1B sponsored from a company like Google? Like, if I had an H-1B from GW, can I work for Google?
Can you make a change?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like work for Google.
You can, but if you're CAP exempt,
Yeah.
and you change to an employer who's not CAP exempt, then you're subject to the non-CAP exempt rules, meaning that you need to file your H-1B on April 1 and do the lottery like everybody else.
So it's like Google has to sponsor. Right.
Who?
Google?
Yes, anybody, whoever it is. But I thought your question was about the rules, so like, yes, I mean, you can also have two H-1Bs, by the way, but I mean, you can technically be working at two different, you can have a part-time H-1B for one company and a part-time one for the other. But if you're CAP exempt, then that doesn't mean that, there's no sneak around. So if you go to a non-cap exempt organization, then now you're gonna have to follow the cap exempt rules.
Okay.
The non-cap exempt rules, sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So when you have two H1Bs, are you considering when you're working part-time, is that one ticket of the lottery? I mean, are you considering, like, you have to go through the process twice or once?
Yes. Well, you have to file a petition for each one. So each petition is subject to, oh, okay, it's this one,
Who hasn't asked a question?
this one.
Are you ready?
I want to follow up his question. He said that he maybe want to start a company. I want to know if I want to participate in lottery next year, what's the best timeline to start a company?
But there's no timeline. I mean, you need to get your stuff together by April 1. So, I mean, it's right around the corner. You should get on that.
I just heard that probably take a lawyer 2 or 3 months to prepare all the documentations. So
Right, so if a company's not in existence then, and you want to file on April 1, you better get on that. It's November. So November, December, January, February, November, December, and then 4 months. So that's 6 months. And let me just say something else about this. Let me be more clear about this question, about the workaround, about having some sort of ownership in a business that then sponsors you for an H-1B. Just to be clear about this business, obviously it needs to be viable. It needs to be, like, you have to be able to demonstrate that the business can employ you, right? Yeah.
My question wasn't about sponsoring me for an H-1B, but having what was it, E-1B5? EB-15. Yeah,
EB-5?
having an EB-15 for myself at the end.
EB-5.
EB-5 for myself at the end of 3 years. So
No, your question is the E2 then. Your question needs to have a consult because you don't know what your question is. Because the thing about it is that what you're saying is you want to invest with these two guys. So either, if you're not in your F1, then you need to be in something.
I'm on my OPT.
Right. Which is 17 months.
Yeah, sure. 29
Right.
months, 36
Yeah.
months.
Yeah.
So at the end of 36 months, I want to be eligible to apply for an EB-1, EB-5. Whichever
EB-5.
one. Yeah, for
Well,
myself.
I think that you should look at, at all the possibilities. Right.
You can keep it open a minute. I just have a quick question.
No, throw it over, there's a lot of
Go as
hands.
far as you can.
In the scenario that he was talking about, if he was forming his company, is there, let's see now, is there any rules related to how much he pays himself because he has to borrow the money or put in the company in order to pay him?
Again, this is going to depend on what visa we're actually talking about. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying too. So let's say that you're on the OPT, like, okay, and there's a difference, by the way, between being an owner and being an employee, right? Owners can get whatever they want, right? I own it and the profit is mine. So I can actually own a business without touching it, right? I'm not working at it, I just own it. I gave you this amount of money, you invested it, now the business is earning money, and that's my profit margin, and that profit comes directly to me as a dividend, right? That is not a paycheck. An employee, though, is a different thing. So the question of how much you have to be paid depends very much on what kind of visa we're talking about.
Okay, so therefore they could be an owner and there's no, like, any rules related to W-2 and all this other stuff.
Well, but there are rules because there's rules related to your status. So, I mean, it depends on what, I mean, that's a very case-specific question about, and like how the business is set up.
See, and then you just, no?
Depends on what your status is when you own this business and what you're doing with this business.
Assume it's a professional services?
No, what is your immigration status when you have this business?
Oh, you mean, I see what you mean, OPT, would assume OPT.
Right. So, I mean, you can technically have, have some ownership piece of a business that then employs you in your OPT. And then your immigration, there's no rules on the amount of payment because you have work authorization to work wherever.
And then after the OPT, that continue, that situation?
No, again, that is related to what kind of status you end up moving to.
Oh, I see.
Thank you. When you say lottery, you mean there's no any kind of prioritization between like different companies? Like Google, for example, okay.
I mean, I feel confident that Google and Microsoft get a crap ton of H-1Bs. But I suspect, that's not because they get priority, it's because they do a lot. They have in-house counsel and they just throw, and they do, the more you spend, the more you win. That might be me, I'm sorry. I don't, yeah. But it is literally a lottery.
So when you say you can create an entity and sponsor yourself, I think there is a ratio, like, for example, there are two owners, you and another person. It doesn't, like, you can't sponsor yourself. You need to have at least
fixed, right? I mean, the issue is, see, now this is conflation, right? Now what you're doing, we're conflating things. So what he said is, can he have ownership in a business that can then employ him on his OPT? And I said yes, right? What you're saying is something very different. And I guess I should have put that on terms to know, which is, what does the word sponsorship mean? That's not sponsorship. That's, I have a business, I have a piece of a business that's employing me in my OPT. Sponsorship is something very different. That is, I'm going to file for an H-1B. I'm going to file for your green card. I'm going to do something way beyond that. And that is a different question. So, and much more complicated and not so easy. And in that case, for example, you cannot own a business, which I didn't get to yet down the road because we got stuck on H-1B. Everyone always gets stuck on H-1B. But you can't own a business and then sponsor yourself for a green card. That is a no-no, right? You also, I mean, do you see what I'm saying? On an H-1B, I think you could probably get away with it, but I mean, you would have to have like a piece of it and be employed.
Okay, so I think H-1B, if you want a company to sponsor you, there will be like 3% is to be American citizen, and then you can sponsor for one H-1B. Is that the ratio? Like 3 and 1. So you need to have at least 3. Like,
No,
American
no.
citizens. No.
No.
Hi. So I went through some of these stuff that you told us. I was in my OPT and founded a company. I had 40% of the company, and the other 60% is my partner.
That's a lot of percentage. Mm-hmm.
I'm happy. And then, luckily, we applied for an EB2 with national interest waiver.
I'm sorry. Oh, you did the EB2 for the green card, EB2. Mm-hmm.
With a national interest waiver, I was employed here with the OPT. So we are waiting for the results. My question is, my partner, he lives in Cyprus, and maybe next year, if he's interested, can we benefit from E2 for his, I don't know, non-immigrant visa?
Okay, I have to look closer at the structure of that business and how you did it to make that determination. So this is the same company that's sponsoring you on the national interest waiver.
Actually, in national interest waivers, I have to be applying myself, but
Right.
the company is
But
also
you're still
doing it.
working at that company.
Yes, yes. I'm the managing member. I'm getting a salary,
Okay?
but I have a minority ownership, so it's not in my control per se.
Okay. So then the person who has the 60% is in Cyprus.
Yes.
And you want to use the same business to do the E2?
Possibly, yeah.
Possibly. Possibly.
I'm
Probably
coming-
going to have to infuse some more money in then.
He already did, and I.
No, he's going to have to at the time of the E2.
Oh, okay. I mean, the initial investment doesn't count at
It
that
does
point?
count. It does count. But now it's not a new business.
It's the same business and it's growing.
Right. So now we have to have this new thing that he's doing because it's a new enterprise.
Oh, okay, okay.
How difficult for an employer to hire someone? Do they pay a lot of money? They have like
I'm sorry, I can't hear you because you don't have the box.
It's getting your, I can project, because I'm an attorney, but it's about, I have a lot of clients and consults about if your employer doesn't want to sponsor you for the H-1B, what you can do to convince them, and that's a difficult answer as an attorney. But we get that question a lot.
Yeah.
No one's paying for it.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing you can do. I mean, that's all there is to it. You have to become, I mean, you know, there's nothing legal about it. I mean, you need to become, this is going to be on the internet, right? I mean, you have to become indispensable, obviously. I mean, you can't force an employer to sponsor you. They have to want you, right? And keep you.
Yeah, but is it difficult? Do they have like, let's say 5 employees to?
So if you don't use the box, it doesn't get recorded and it won't be on the video.
Oh, okay.
I think she
So anyway, she can ask the question, then we can come back to you.
Thank you very much. So my question is related to the H-1B. So if it's my employer agrees to sponsor me, and what is the latest time that they have to file the paperwork?
Okay, have you ever had an H-1B before?
No, it's like I'm on the OPT and my.
Okay, is your employer an institute of higher education, a nonprofit research organization, or a government research organization? Okay, then when do they need to do it? I mean, if they've never done it before, then they need to start, I mean, you have to do it by April 1, so you need to start at least 2 months ahead. You know, if you've never done it before, if they have never done an H-1B, you have to do it at least 2 months ahead.
Okay, so but if they are very used to that, which means they could maybe start later, maybe.
If they've already done an H-1B
For other people.
for other people, you could probably start a little bit later.
Okay, but still like February, March.
What it is that employers have to have verification with USCIS. And so if they haven't done that, that's a process that takes a little bit of time. And so,
As I said, it's kind of a quota thing, so I'm wondering if that, like, I could have my employer fill all the paperwork, sponsor me, but at the same time, I'm not sure if I could, through marriage, like record through marriage and start this application altogether at the same time.
yes,
Maybe it doesn't matter. So it's not a big deal.
no. But if you found love, you might want to just stick with that. It's a little bit easier. And also then you're not tied to your employer. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that people should do that, right? But you're tied to your spouse. I guess you could think about that, right? I don't know, right? I mean, you're kind of stuck with that guy.
I said that it takes 3 to 6 months, but a couple of years ago, I'm not sure.
For what?
To get a couple of marriage, so I'm not sure the period it takes from now. I think that.
It depends on where you live. But I would say in the Washington, D.C. area, it takes 3 to 6 months.
3 to 6 months.
What if you don't get chosen in the lottery, then what happens?
Then you should run to Vegas with your new love that you found. In this example only. No, if you don't get chosen for the lottery, then you cry a lot, is what I understand. That's what I hear from my own clients. Like, and it sucks. It really sucks. Because it's literally just a lottery. I mean, there's not anything you can do about it. You have to quickly decide what you're going to do next, which for most people it's, I guess I'm going back to school. I mean, for most people, that's what ends up happening. Someone's got the box.
You have a hard stop at 7, so
I have no idea what time it is.
it is quarter of.
Okay.
If there's material you want to cover between now and then, you might want to press on.
Okay, does anybody, well, I don't have any material that I personally need to cover. I can tell you that on the slides, let me just say this for 1 second. On the slides are the J1 visa that we have not covered. We've not covered J1s, we've not covered Ls, we've not covered Os, and the country specifics. And this, we never covered the green card. Does anyone care?
Yeah.
I guess
One quick last question. So we get the result of the H-1B in May, and if we.
Well, you only get the result of the H-1B in May if you file premium processing.
Oh.
Okay, if you don't do premium processing, then you could wait 4 to 5 months for a decision.
Right.
So if you do premium processing, you will receive a decision in 2 weeks, which of course is not April because it takes, when they, on April 1, 2, and 3, right? USCIS is flooded with H-1Bs. And then one day they're like, okay, that's it. And then they tell you, we received 135,000, we will now begin the lottery process. And then I don't know what they do in their secret building, but they go, and then all of a sudden, people start getting receipts. If you get a receipt, you're very happy. If you don't get a receipt and you get your whole packet back with your checks, you're not happy. After that point, then it starts. So that's like really, you end up at like middle of April. So if you filed premium processing, meaning you paid that what is now $1,225, and I can't remember what the new fee is, but it went up. Then 2 weeks later, you'll get a decision. If you didn't do premium processing, it's 4 to 5 months.
Okay, so the green card application for marriage takes about 3 to 6 months. What if I didn't win the lottery of the H-1B and my OPT expires, but I haven't heard back from the green card application yet. So,
Are you married to a U.S. citizen?
Yeah. Also,
who cares?
Oh, okay. So in that case, I don't have to go back to. Okay.
Nobody cares.
As long as your green card application is pending before your OPT expires.
Well, these things are going on at the same time in her story.
Yeah.
The green card application is pending after the OPT expires. What's that?
Okay, it's pending, as long as you filed it.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Throw it to someone, quicker, come on.
You mentioned that the US.
You need the box. You can talk while you're walking.
So my question is that if you are on a F1 visa and you are a passive investor in a company, then it's okay, right? Because you can just receive dividends and things like that. But will people challenge you? Like, will they say, oh, your business only have 2 people, then you must have participated in some way, or?
Yes. I mean, that's the short answer. Yes.
But if you do not participate, then you just.
Great. Then you prove it. I mean, your question is like, is it possible that they could question this? Yes. Can they question this? Yes. Can you defend yourself against it? Yes.
But is it common that people like usually challenge this kind of cooperation?
I think only if they suspect that there's more than that going on. And that, I mean, how people make those determinations, that's a harder thing to know. Like whether or not people are calling and saying, hey, I think this person's really working, I don't know. I mean, how they decide who they're going to investigate and who they're not, I don't know the answer to that. But if they do it, then obviously you're going to be in the position of defending yourself.
Then, for example, after you graduate, then you enter from F1 to OPT, then you can, like, you're not holding the majority of the stake, then you can have your company sponsor your.
This, like the one thing that when you do something like that, when you have your own ownership and this is happening, I would say this, it's something that, you know, I shouldn't be so flip about the OPT and the working for yourself, because the truth of the matter is that where these questions actually, where they actually investigate you is when you're getting your green card. So there was that other vocabulary word, the compliance, right? So if at any time they think that you were not in compliance when you were a student, and when you're sitting in that interview for your green card, and they're like, listen, we've been looking at your file and we noticed that you actually owned this business while you were a student, and then later on you got OPT, and then magically you were working there, and then weirdly they also sponsor you for your H-1B. You know, that's really when you're in the position of having to defend yourself. So you should be careful.
You mentioned that the company don't have the H-1B filing experience. They have to do the USCIS verification, and that's different from the E-Verify, right?
Totally different.
And how long will it take them, and how much is?
But the Department of Labor is not the fastest.
Okay.
And also they had a lawsuit this year, so they seem behind on stuff.
Okay. Do we have to pay for that, or is it, no? Okay, just. For the DOL part?
The verification? No. No, but the fees are very high for H-1Bs, which I guess goes back to the question that you had, which is the other reason why employers don't want to do this is because it costs a crap ton. I mean, the fees are going up, but when you think about fees alone, like a first-time H-1B right now, and I don't remember the fees, but the fees are going up. It's $325, $500 for fraud prevention, $750 if you have less than 25 employees, or $1,500 if you have more than 50 employees. Plus, I mean, you're already at what? $2,000. right? And so at the end of the day, an H-1B costs an employer something like at least $5,000 or more for you. So you better be good.
Can you briefly talk about the L and J visas, please?
The L and the J.
Okay, so on the J is this one, right? So the J is I hate the J actually. This is the one that a lot of people use to use academic training, as you know. Also doctors use it, and they use it in scholars. And also they use it for nannies and for lifeguards and for people who work at ski resorts for travel and work. It's the cultural exchange program. The purpose of the J1 is to allow cultural exchange between two countries. The hard thing about the J1s is that a lot of the useful J1s, meaning not nannies, not lifeguards, and not ski resort workers, is that they have this 2-year foreign residency requirement, and that's an issue. So, and that is determined by who is funding the program. So if the United States government or the country that you come from is funding the J1, or whatever the program is you're doing, then often you have this 2-year foreign residency requirement, which means that you can't apply for your green card and you can't go to an H-1B until you've complied with the 2-year foreign residency requirement. Does anyone have any questions about that? It's also not a useful switch for the most part, unless you're going to be a doctor or in the or even scholarship, because there's this limitation on it, right? It's like really 12 months, 18 months, 36 months, that's it. And once you're done, you're done. Okay? So then, real quick, this is the L. The L1A visa is an intercompany transferee. What you need to know about that is that you have 2 companies. So you have Microsoft China and you have Microsoft US, right? So the 2 companies have to be attached, they have to have a relationship. They either have to be affiliates with each other or they have to be parent and subsidiary. If that is the case, you can transfer a manager or somebody in the executive capacity from the outside, from the China Microsoft to the US Microsoft, right? That's how the L1 works. You can do a new office L1, which doesn't mean that it's a new office only in the US. So now I have a company in Spain where I make tortillas, and now I want to open a new place in the United States. That company has to exist. So I have my parent company in Spain, which opens a new office in the United States, the subsidiary, making tortillas, okay? So tortilla 2. Now that can be a new office. And I can transfer someone from my Spanish office in a managerial capacity or in an executive capacity to my new tortilla 2 in the US. The good thing about the L1, which can be beautiful, but I gotta say something about this. L1s are great, actually, because you can go from L1, from the non-immigrant visa to the green card, which is nice. Bad thing about L1s is that if you are a small business, USCIS does not like you. So this is a problem. I don't know why nobody has sued them yet, but they should, because they have USCIS has an issue with small companies. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question that from L1 it can go to the green card, but for F1, is it possible to go to green card?
Absolutely not.
Oh, okay.
Unless you find one.
Yeah, I mean,
But you're not going from the F1 to the green card.
You say that he can sponsor the green card, but I'm on F1 right now. So is it possible for?
Oh yes, so you're not talking about going from F1 to the green card. What you're talking about is maintaining your F1 while you apply for your green card. And that you can do. Because basically, on my last note on this, because I think we must be coming to this hard stop because I don't know what time it is, but
10.
10 minutes, okay. I wish I had a whiteboard, because what I often say in my office is, oh, I do. I forgot, how convenient to be at school. What I often say is that people, when they think about immigration, is that, look, here is the line, right? And this is your green card line. At the end of this is me trying to get my green card. So I'm in whatever my status is, and the whole time I'm moving towards this process, which is a long process sometimes, right? But you are not on that step. What you are is you're here. This is a different line, okay? And on this line, you're here on your F1, right? You're here in your F1 status. In order to get your green card, there are three hardcore requirements. I need 1, a lawful entry. That means that somebody admitted me on a visa. I need 2, an immigrant visa, which can be easy to get, cannot be easy to get. And I need 3, maintenance of status. You must be in a lawful status, maintain status, okay. You must be in a lawful status when you apply for your green card. So after you go through this long, arduous process, which we never covered to get to your green card, because that wasn't in my request, but I can. when we get to the end and you're actually applying for that green card, you have to have maintained status the entire time you were here, unless you found love. Now, for everybody else, you're here in this F1. So what are we doing? What is really important? You spend your whole time going like this. You got to go to the H-1B, or you got to go to the L, or you go to whatever. Your whole time is you have to be thinking about how am I maintaining my status? Because these are two different lines. This is your non-immigrant life, and this is your immigrant life. They can happen at the same time, but it is crucial that this line, that you constantly hop from little pad to little pad. You can never be out of status. If you are out of status and we come here, you are not getting this. So, I mean, this is something that you can do. You can be in a student status, right? And someone can be doing this process for you. And as long as you're maintaining your status, when you get to the end, that's fine. We can convert to green card.
Okay. So it means I need to maintain the F1 status, which means I cannot go back to my
You
country.
need to maintain some status. Any status will do, right? But I need you to be in status for us when we get here. Otherwise, I can't get you a green card. Right? Does that make sense? Okay. So, yeah, throw the ball. I mean, box thing. Does everyone understand that? Okay.
Yes. So how small is small when you said USCIS does not like small companies for L?
This goes to that thing that I was talking about earlier about how, like, you know, with an L1, what you're saying is, I'm transferring this person to an executive position. But if your company is really small, that means that they can't do any non-qualifying acts, like photocopy.
US dollar in revenue or?
It just doesn't matter. I mean, the point is that you have to prove that you're not doing any non-qualifying acts, which is really hard. So if you have a really small company, and you transfer this is where the classic, like, this is more of the classic, like, I own a company I own that company, the Tortilla 1, remember in my example, Spain, right? So I got this Tortilla 1 company, and I'm going to open Tortilla 2. But when I'm going to keep Tortilla 1 going. Tortilla 1 is going. It's all happy. I got employees. They're working on it. But I'm going to open Tortilla 2. So I'm going to open Tortilla 2, and I'm going to transfer myself to the U.S. to handle Tortilla 2, right? Okay. But only I'm here. So who's making the tortillas? Okay. I can't be in my executive capacity and making the tortillas, okay?
In Spain, I want to transfer someone from there.
But I can transfer myself over, I can transfer anyone over, but that's the problem with small companies is because, if you have this one person that's in their executive or their managerial capacity, who's doing everything else? And that is a question that comes up. And you have to be able to demonstrate it.
Do I need to prove that person has been in Spain physically for 2 years? Or?
On the L1A, you have to be at least 1 year in the parent or subsidiary company of the other, or the parent, subsidiary, or affiliate company in the other country. So you also have to do the L1A transfer, you have to have been working for a year in Spanish Tortilla 1. I was at Tortilla 1 for at least a year.
Since working for that 1 year, he cannot be in the U.S., can he?
Right, obviously.
Okay.
So we're down to our last 5 minutes. Is there anybody who has a topic that hasn't been even introduced yet you'd like to visit?
I have a question about
G1.
Okay, go quickly.
Students G1s, but it's not funded by government, either government, US or China. So wondering, do I need a waiver?
I don't know, what does your passport say? What does your passport say? What does the visa say?
Now that I'm on F1, I used to be a J1.
Okay, what does the J1 visa say? Okay, so you know that you are subject to the 2-year requirement. There are some exceptions, but on your visa for the J1, on the bottom, like the annotated section, it says, bearer is subject to the 212E requirement. Bearer is not subject to 212E requirement. It says on the visa. Also on the I-20 that they issue for the J1, also says that on the I-20. It says, bearer is subject to the 212E requirement, bearer is not. So it should be on there. You shouldn't be, but it should be on that piece of paper. And if there's a question mark about funding and whether or not it's accurate, you can then do a advisory opinion to the State Department. You're welcome.
would you mind just really quickly going over, because I saw on the slides, something about the special visas available to Canadians and New Zealand, folks in New Zealand?
These dudes? This one?
Yeah, these ones, yeah.
Okay, so these are country-specific visas, which is, there's the TN visa, which was created by NAFTA. They're only for Canadians and Mexicans, and it's a very specific list of professions. It's kind of like the H-1B, but it's like a mini version of the H-1B because it's not every professional job.
Is it also a lottery system?
No. No, it's anybody can get it, and you can do it at the port of entry in Alberta, or wherever you are. You can actually do it right at the, right in Niagara Falls. You can cross over and be like, here's my TN application, it's perfect. Initial stay of 3 years, keep on doing it, it's great. Did you have a specific question about that?
No, that's about it. I wanted to learn more about the
Okay, so actually one thing I will tell you about the TN visa, and just one more thing about the H-1B. An H-1B is a dual intent visa, and as is the L-1A. They're the only non-immigrant visas that allow for dual intent. I should have put that on the terms to know. Dual intent means that I'm here in I'm doing the bouncy thing and I'm applying for my green card. Every visa except for the H-1B and the L-1A does not have dual intent, which means that every time you apply for that visa, the student visa, the J-1 visa, the TN visa, the E-3 visa, all these other visas, the O-1, you are saying that you are here temporarily and it is your intent to return to your home country. So you can't do the TN visa while doing that unless you start this process immediately and we sneak around and get it done under the table while nobody's looking.
With that, I'm afraid we have to quit. I'm sorry.
That's
It's
okay.
gone forever.
Well done, well done.